about to have a really bad day.
Battlefield 3 is widely regarded as the greatest Battlefield game of all time, the GOAT within the Battlefield franchise. Even now, 14 years later, no other Battlefield game has offered the same experience as Battlefield 3. There is something about the game that has simply embedded itself in people's hearts, and even if you think other Battlefield games are better, there is no denying the impact Battlefield 3 had on the franchise as a whole. A lot of what we see in Battlefield 6 today has been inspired by that game, and for me personally, it's still my favourite Battlefield game ever. But in this video, I want to take a look back at what exactly made Battlefield 3 so good, and why after 14 years it is still considered a masterpiece. In 2011, the Battlefield franchise found itself in a weird position. Battlefield Bad Company 2 was a fantastic game, a game that I love and a game that many other people loved. In many ways, it redefined how a Battlefield game played. It revolutionised destruction not only for the franchise but for the entire FPS scene. It was the first Battlefield game that really gained a lot of popularity on consoles too. Of course you had Modern Combat on the PS2 and the first Bad Company game, which was a console exclusive, but neither of those were that popular. Bad Company 2 however went on to sell 12 million copies, which at the time made it the best selling Battlefield of all time. The problem was however the Call of Duty franchise. For years it had dominated the console market. Ever since Call of Duty Modern Warfare launched in 2007, no other FPS game could really compete. Many tried and many failed. The franchise was seen as the gold standard as to what an FPS game should be, both with its great campaigns and multiplayer experiences. In the same year, the Bad Company 2 sold 12 million copies, Black Ops 1 sold just over double that amount, selling 25 million copies. EA and DICE knew it would be difficult to compete with the juggernaut that Call of Duty had become, but they didn't back down from the fight whatsoever. The first news of Battlefield 3 came in June 2009 during an investor call in which the CEO of EA at the time, John Pleasant, confirmed that the company will publish Battlefield 3, a successor to the beloved Battlefield 2 game. And this is what he said: "I've had the luxury of looking at Battlefield 3 over at DICE in Sweden and was highly impressed by the way the team is working on that product. Of course that's not in this fiscal year, but this is a product that is looking very good." Now this wasn't much, but it was enough to get people excited. However, there was no further news regarding the game for 8 months. Then in February of 2010, Frederick Lilgren, a former DICE manager, said this: "Well, I knew that they were going to the console route because the numbers on the PC were dwindling. I know what they were talking about on the PC side for the next Battlefield, and they haven't announced any of that yet, after 3 years. So I know what's coming, and I still can't talk about it because I'm still under NDA. What the PC version is going to be, Battlefield 3, I think it's going to absolutely blow everyone away, but I can't tell you what it is, but it will blow people away. That's why it's going to blow people away, because it's not Modern Warfare 2 PC. It's not that experience." I think what's most interesting in what he said is that the game was already in development for 3 years, and that the reason they went down the console route was because the PC numbers were dwindling. This was a time where console game was the more popular option, so it only made sense for Battlefield to head down that route and try and compete with Call of Duty. In August of that same year, Battlefield 3 was announced in a rather weird way. In a blog post, it was announced that if you pre-ordered the new Medal of Honor game, which by the way was criminally underrated, you would gain access to the Battlefield 3 beta. Then again, it all went quiet until February of 2011, when a teaser trailer was released. You couldn't make much of it, but it was more confirmation and more excitement for the fans. It was a sign that the marketing for the game was going to increase. In that same month, another teaser video released, this time showing small clips of actual gameplay from the campaign. In March, they would go on to release 3 gameplay videos showcasing the first mission from the campaign. However, each video ended with almost a cliffhanger. They didn't show everything. And when the final video went live at the end, they revealed that the full gameplay reveal would take place in April. Not only that, but pre-ordering the limited edition of the game would grant you access to the Back to Kharg expansion for free. The classic Battlefield 2 map was making a return. What was brilliant about this part of the marketing strategy is that in each gameplay video they never revealed the big thing you wanted to see. They never shown the building coming down after you shot the rocket launcher at the sniper in the sniper nest, and they never showed the earthquake at the end of the mission. With each reveal they kept the excitement going, until they finally revealed the whole thing in April. At the end of the video they teased more gameplay, this time featuring jets, tanks and everything you expect from a Battlefield game. Then in June E3, we got our first look at multiplayer gameplay. It's the infamous Operation Metro, and it's beautiful. People who got a chance to play it during E3 loved it, and the hype train at this point had fully started. Not long after, DICE and EA released another gameplay video, this time showing off the Rolling Thunder mission, which showed off the scale of the game and also the vehicular gameplay it had to offer. But like I said, EA and DICE had no plan to slow down, and so they posted another E3 video, this time showcasing the new Frostbite 2 engine and everything that was possible because of it. The engine was incredible for its time and made the game look and feel truly next gen. E3 then comes to an end and Battlefield 3 receives several awards that they then release a small trailer for. Then during the Gamescom in August, DICE released the Caspian Border trailer, and it was everything that Battlefield fans wanted. It had scale, it had destruction, it had all-out warfare. This seemed like a true Battlefield experience. In September, they released some more single-player gameplay, but at this point people wanted to play the game. They'd seen enough and simply wanted to get their hands on the new Battlefield game. And on September 27th, they finally did. The open beta went live and people loved it. I remember putting in disgusting amount of hours into this beta back on the PS3. I would even get up earlier for school just to get a few games in beforehand. The beta then ended on October 10th. 8 days later, however, another new trailer is released. This time it's a multiplayer gameplay trailer, and it shows off all the maps. It shows Dam Van Peak and the famous jump off the cliff. It's a great trailer, and finally, a week before its launch, the launch trailer is released.
Amadei, jump. Shame. You come to our country to murder us, yet we are the terrorists?
All call signs listed. We on mission launch. Repeat, we on mission launch.
18 hours ago, I get a call from Homeland Security saying there's a Marine in detention I need to talk to.
Gentlemen, as you know, we're dealing with insurgents crossing over from Iran.
You want us to believe that there's a PLR threat and Solomon's at the head?
You're the quick reaction force, gentlemen. We're trusting you to handle this.
The nuke is still out there. Can't just walk away from the threat.
Let's go find our Marines.
Get down on the ground! I said get down on the ground!
This is not a trial. You are guilty. I know how your fucking story ends.
The amazing thing about the marketing on Battlefield 3 is how it kept its momentum. It was almost relentless and always showed enough to get you excited, but never too much to the point where you felt you knew everything the game had to offer. Battlefield 3 also had a huge marketing budget of 50 million, which at the time was huge. This showed just how much confidence EA had in this game, and they were right to have that confidence because the game delivered. When people talk about Battlefield 3, they usually jump straight to the multiplayer. The destruction, the jets, Caspian Border, Operation Metro, Dam Van Peak, all of that overshadowed the campaign so hard that for years the general consensus became, yeah, it was fine, but the more you go back to it, the more you realise something unusual. The campaign was a cinematic, tightly constructed thriller that actually was a lot of fun to play. I used to be of that very same opinion that the campaign wasn't really that good, but going back and replaying it for this video actually made me change my mind on it. The campaign uses its missions like puzzle pieces that eventually snap together into a single story. Every mission plants tiny setups that pay off later. Every perspective adds another layer, and when you finally reach the ending, you realise the whole thing was designed to be experienced like a tense war film that in no way, shape or form is perfect or a masterpiece, but it is a fun experience. The Bad Company 2 campaign had great characters which carried the single player experience. However, Battlefield 3 has some of the most memorable missions in the franchise, but on the flip side, the characters aren't half as interesting as those in the Bad Company series. But instead of just throwing you into levels one after another, Battlefield 3 ties everything together with the interrogation of Staff Sergeant Henry Blackburn. This structure does two things. First, it gives pace and a rhythm. Action, then reflection, then doubt, then the next piece of the puzzle. Second, it injects the whole story with uncertainty. The CIA agents don't trust him, and the game uses its tension to make every mission feel like it's leading somewhere bigger. Every mission you're about to revisit comes through Blackburn's memories or the stories of other characters such as Montez, Dima, Hawkins or Miller. Because of that structure, the campaign almost feels like a puzzle, and each mission is a missing piece. So let's go through them. The game opens with a runaway train prologue, a chaotic close-quarter fight on a New York subway as Blackburn scrambles to stop a terrorist attack. It feels disconnected when you first play it, but the payoffs come much later, because this is actually the game's ending disguised as the beginning. It sets up the stakes without explaining the context, letting the whole campaign slowly reveal how we ended up on that train and why Blackburn is risking everything. It drops you into the story at full speed and then rips you right back out for interrogation. Classic setup with a delayed payoff. Operation Swordbreaker is the real beginning, a squad of Marines rolling into a city on the brink of collapse. What makes Swordbreaker memorable is the atmosphere. The mission begins with banter and you arriving with your squad in the back of a Humvee. You then make your way through the city until you run to an ambush where a member of the squad is shot. The fight then transitions onto the rooftops until you finally make your way back down and go and disarm a bomb. And then comes the earthquake, the ground swallowing entire streets. It's non-stop action that sets the tone for the campaign really well. Then Uprising picks up after the earthquake, trapping Blackburn's squad behind hostile lines. The mission is tighter, darker, almost claustrophobic at times. It forces you to fight through broken streets and half-collapsed buildings. Combat here is close and frantic, and personally I would have liked to see more emphasis on stealth during this mission, but either way it's still pretty solid. As you make your way through the crumbled city, you run into Montez, a member of his squad. Together you make your way to the extraction point. The highlight is the street battle near the end. It feels like a level designed to overwhelm you just enough to keep your heart rate high enough. Then the game pulls a hard left and hands you to Lieutenant Jennifer Hawkins aboard the USS George H.W. Bush. Going hunting is the jet mission people remember because it felt like a playable version of a military documentary. You're not flipping the plane upside down doing ace combat tricks, you're coordinating with the pilot, spotting targets, and participating in realistic air combat. The mission exists to zoom out the scale of the conflict and to subtly show that something is brewing beyond Iran. The air combat, missile trails and radio chat create an almost hypnotic rhythm. It's one of the most cinematic missions DICE ever made. The audio design and visuals are absolutely breathtaking even today. Blackburn then returns in Operation Guillotine, a nighttime assault down a hillside and into a cluttered urban zone. The presentation carries this mission. Lightning flashes trace around slicing through the dark. You're storming into a city that looks like it's drowning. The main objective of the mission is to gain any sort of intelligence concerning al-Bashir. The mission begins with you storming downhill carrying a mortar. Once you reach the wall, you set up the mortar and fire an illumination round that will give you and your team better visibility. After climbing over the wall, you then proceed with the assault. You are then told to take control of the Metropolitan Bank, where after opening the vault you find maps of New York and Paris along with train timetables. But you also find a large green box with a portable Russian nuke inside of it, and 2 spots that were empty. Then the game switches perspectives to Dmitry Dima Mayakovsky, a Russian GRU operative, and the entire campaign here shifts tone. This mission is colder and more surgical. It takes place in Paris and Dima is tasked in stopping the nuke. After fighting throughout the city and chasing the carrier, they find out that the bag is in fact empty, and then the nuke goes off.
Что за херня, бля? Это же пустышка, не ядерное оружие, бля! Топор лишнему, где факел?
The tension isn't the gunfights but in the countdown itself, the knowledge that a bomb is in the city and someone is moving it. This mission plants almost all the key narrative seeds that grow in the final missions. Then we have another classic Battlefield 3 mission, Thunder Run. This is the mission everyone remembers. You're Jonathan Miller rolling across the desert in an M1 Abrams during a massive armoured push trying to rescue Blackburn and his squad in Tehran. The sandstorms, the long range tank fights, it's a great mission and pretty much a copy and paste of Going Hunting mission but from a tank perspective. After the desert victory lap, Miller's tank group stalls inside Tehran. After heavy resistance, he's captured, and instead of rescuing him, the game cuts to a brutal execution scene. You're forced to watch Miller die on camera as his kidnappers broadcast it to the world. It's rare for Battlefield to take the playable character death so far, and that shock value is exactly why it works. Thunder Run built him up, fear no evil tears him down. Then we move on to Night Shift. Blackburn and his team sneak across the city at night and eventually capture al-Bashir and escort him to an Osprey. However, he has suffered critical wounds and dies. But before his death, he manages to say a few things about how Solomon betrayed him to obtain the portable nukes, and the only thing that we are left with is his phone, which could give us intel on Solomon's plot. Rock and a hard place is where everything begins collapsing for Blackburn. His squad gets ambushed in a valley pinned between mountain ridges and heavy machine gun nests. The chaos is relentless. After fighting off the Russian forces, a Russian fighter performs a strafing run. We manage to take the fighter down, but we also learn that Campo and Matkovic died during the strafing run. Montez and Blackburn then separate and carry on their own. In Kaffarov, we switch back to Dima and his team as they try to infiltrate Kaffarov's mansion. After fighting our way through the mansion, we finally locate Kaffarov as he is about to take off in his helicopter. We then jump onto the helicopter and get into somewhat of a brawl that leads to both of us falling down into the pool. Kaffarov begs for his life and says he will give any information Dima wants regarding Solomon, but Dima proceeds to knock him out. The mission then cuts back to the interrogation room of Blackburn. Then we are dropped into the shoes of Blackburn, who is searching Kaffarov's mansion after the helicopter crash. We find Kaffarov knocked out by the pool just as Dima left him there, but Dima is still there. He tells us that Kaffarov sold the nukes to Solomon and that Solomon plans to blow up Times Square in New York. As Dima finishes telling us Solomon's plans, Cole, the leader of the Misfit squad, attempts to arrest us, and we have no other choice but to shoot him. The final mission starts with us back in the interrogation room where we finally learn some new things. We are being interrogated for killing Cole, our commanding officer, but also because they believe that it is Dima who is the bad guy. Not only that, but we learn that Solomon was an overseas asset for years. However, Blackburn knows he's right. He knows Solomon is the bad guy. And then there is a call that a train has gone missing, and Blackburn breaks free from the interrogation room and attempts to stop the train. We play the same portion of the game that we played right at the start. However, this time we get to encounter Solomon. After coming face to face with him, we blow up the train. Solomon manages to escape and we have to chase him. We fight our way through the wreckage and debris and make our way out the underground tunnels and get in a car with Montez to carry on chasing Solomon through the streets of Times Square, and this whole sequence is extremely cinematic. That is until we collide with Solomon's car. The screen goes black, and as we wake back up from the crash, we see Solomon crawling out of his car with a revolver in hand. As he makes his way over to us, he proceeds to shoot and kill Montez. He then goes to shoot Blackburn, but is out of ammo. Blackburn swings his arm and locks the other side of the handcuffs onto Solomon's wrists, and the two get into a brawl in which Blackburn picks up a brick and eventually kills Solomon. He then opens the bag and finds the nuke inside of it. The nuke and Solomon have been stopped. The campaign is short but dense, linear but intentional, cinematic but grounded, and mission by mission it creates momentum that eventually crashes into that final scene on the train, the moment everything pays off. For a franchise mostly known for multiplayer chaos, Battlefield 3 quietly delivered one of the most cohesive and well-planned campaigns in the series. Now, if compared to the likes of Black Ops 1 or even Spec Ops The Line, it's not all that great, and towards the end of the story the missions felt slightly rushed. Especially not knowing what happened to Blackburn after he killed and stopped Solomon from blowing up New York. but within the Battlefield franchise, I think it's probably the best one, although I would agree that both Bad Company games could also have that spot. But if anything, revisiting every mission reminds you how much potential Battlefield campaigns used to have, and how rare it is for them to feel this focused again, especially after playing the Battlefield 6 campaign. The game also had a co-op campaign experience, and although it wasn't anything amazing, it was a nice touch for those who wanted to try it, and it gave players 6 new missions to play through. But as I always say, no one really plays a Battlefield game for its campaign. Battlefield 3's multiplayer is for many the perfect balance of what a Battlefield game should be. It felt like it had something for everyone. If you liked close quarter combat and more infantry focused gameplay, the game had you covered. But if you were someone who enjoyed the more open maps with more vehicles, and that all-out warfare aspect that Battlefield had become popular for, the game also had that. Like I already said, this was a game that I put thousands of hours into back on my PS3, as I'm sure many other people did. At the time it felt like a true next-gen FPS game, something that no other FPS game did at the time. And there are plenty of reasons as to why this game's multiplayer is still remembered so fondly, and why to this day so many people still say it's their favourite. But I think a big reason for that, and why it felt and looked like a next-gen game, was because of the new Frostbite 2 engine. Animations looked better, they were smoother, more natural, they felt more grounded and tactile, unless you were trying to vault over a 3-foot wall. But those new and improved animations helped the game look and feel better and more realistic. Destruction was also back, and although it wasn't on the same level or scale as Bad Company 2 was, it was still fantastic. Maps were bigger and the urban maps were far more dense and detailed than ever before. The lighting was incredible too, unless you were looking at the sun and felt like Jesus was about to welcome you home. But honestly, for a 2011 game, the lighting was so good. Of course the game had that blue tint to it which it became famous for. And the audio. Audio was top tier too. Everything just sounded louder, more clearer, especially when compared to all of the Battlefield games that came after it. But all those things mixed together created a truly next-gen experience that not only looked great, but played and felt great too. That isn't to say the game wasn't without its faults though. The screen shake could get obnoxious with so many explosions and other things happening. The amount of screen shake this game had was frustrating at times. It would result in you dying a lot of the times because you simply couldn't adjust your aim or just couldn't see who the fuck was shooting at you. Then you add the over-the-top suppression and it was basically GG. I know some people loved suppression in this game because it made gunfights more realistic and made the support class with its LMGs more effective, but god was it annoying. Especially the visual effect where it looked like Diddy had just smeared baby oil all over your screen. Suppression honestly made using any other perk apart from cover useless in this game because of how strong it was. I already mentioned the vaulting and how buggy and annoying that was. Honestly, vaulting and suppression were, for me, the two most annoying things about this game. You would sometimes try and vault over a wall 3 or 4 times only to fail each time and inevitably die. But let's talk about the good things in this game, and there is a lot to get through here. First I'll start with the maps, and I'll say this with confidence that Battlefield 3 had the best Battlefield maps ever. Especially the launch maps. The game launched with 9 multiplayer maps, all offering something different. Playing different and looking different. You had your urban maps like Sen Crossing where you would fight in these alleyways or across the bridge, all whilst a tank was roaming the map. You had Grand Bazzar which offered that same experience with tight alleyways and close quarter combat. Then of course Operation Metro, which was an absolute clusterfuck but many people loved it. Personally I've never been a huge fan of those type of maps but I can see the appeal it has. But you also had maps like Caspian Border, Kharg Island and Operation Firestorm and Tehran Highway, which mixed infantry gameplay and vehicular gameplay extremely well, offering that famous all-out warfare Battlefield experience. And of course the other fan favourites, No Shah Canals and Damavand Peak. Team Deathmatch and Rush on No Shah Canals was incredible, but nothing will ever come close playing on the attacking side in Damavand Peak for the first time and having to jump off that cliff. Honestly, it's one of those moments in gaming where you just think to yourself, wow, this is amazing. It's a moment I'm sure everyone remembers. It just felt next gen. Like that was the future of the franchise. And Damavand Peak as a whole is probably my favourite map ever to play on Rush. Each of these maps played well too, they flowed well, and honestly there wasn't a map that I didn't enjoy, which is hard to say about any other Battlefield game apart from probably Bad Company 2. Most maps played well both on Conquest and Rush was still the best game mode in the game, which as we know only got worse with future games, which is a shame because personally Rush and Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 was when I had the most fun in a Battlefield game. And it's probably why I loved Operations Battlefield 1 because it reminded me and played similar to the way Rush did in Battlefield 3 and Bad Company 2. The map selection only got better with future expansions, but I'll talk about those later. Battlefield 3 had its classic 4-class system with Assault, Engineer, Support and Recon. Each class excelled when it was played in the way that it was intended, and balancing wasn't exactly awful for the most part, but Assault was definitely the strongest out of the 4. You could constantly heal yourself, revive teammates, and it also had access to assault rifles, which were the best guns in the game, especially the AEK and the M16A3. Other classes were still great and were useful, but Assault was the most popular choice. And just because it was so strong, it sort of undermined the other classes, which was a bit of a shame. Recon still performed best at range, and its spawn beacon was as strong as ever. Engineer was still needed near enough every match because there was no other way to really deal with vehicles. Support was great for resupplying ammo, but also lying down suppressive fire because of how annoying suppression was in this game. And Assault was just overall really strong. But what I really liked about this game is the gadgets. Now, there wasn't a huge amount of them, but it felt like all of them felt viable to use. Sometimes having less is better than overwhelming players with choices. Nowadays they offer more gadgets, but everyone ends up using the same ones anyway because those are the best ones to use. Whereas in Battlefield 3 it felt like you could pick any and still play well with it. The vibe and identity of this game was amazing too. It was grounded, focused on military warfare, and everything in the game reflected that. The weapons, the gadgets, the attachments, nothing felt out of place. The player skins also reflected real life uniforms and just looked fucking great. My all time favourite is the support class skin with the ammo wrapped around him. The uniforms actually helped you blend in and there was a good amount of them to choose from. It was easy to distinguish factions too. It was easy to tell who was a US soldier and who was playing as a Russian one, and I think that's something that skins in nowadays ruin. A lot of the times it's hard to tell what faction someone is because most people have the same skin applied. However, that wasn't the case in Battlefield 3. Weapon skins also reflected that same grounded feel. There was no crazy colours or futuristic looking skins. They were somewhat simple, but only enhanced the immersion of the game even more. And do you know what also helped the immersion of the game? The voice lines. A lot of the time they would go unnoticed because of all the chaos that is usually happening around you. But Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 1 had some of the best voice lines in the franchise. Just listen to this.
Dude, I can't hear shit! Fuck, that about took my nuts off! Fuck was that? Oh fuck, we're in the wrong place! Good fucking shot, man. Nice shot, you took that fucker out. Get your dicks in the dirt, we got a sniper! Wake the fuck up, it's a sniper!
Some of them are funny, and some of them capture the fear and brutality of real life war. Next, let's talk about the best aspect of Battlefield 3, which was the gunplay. In my opinion, Battlefield 3 to this day remains the Battlefield game which had the best gunplay. Weapons had a real kick to them. You couldn't just hold down the trigger and shoot and expect every bullet to land. You had to think about your position and about your range. You couldn't beam players at long range with SMGs or assault rifles the same way you can in most FPS games nowadays. Gunplay required skill, and it felt rewarding. It rewarded those who put in the time to learn how to microburst effectively, and those who learned how to control spread and recoil. The guns were responsive, and it felt like you were always in control of the weapon. The game had a high TTK too, which meant the skill gap was higher. Those who knew how to control any given weapon were putting themselves at an advantage already because they would land more shots. A higher TTK also made for more tactical gameplay, I think. You had to be more aware of your position and about how much ammo you had, using cover way more often because if you got caught out in the open, the chances of you surviving were very slim. Going back and playing Battlefield 3, the gunplay is the very first thing that stands out to me, and honestly I wish Battlefield 3 had that same approach to gunplay. The weapon balancing on the other hand was quite questionable. The M16A3 AEK, the USAS with 12 frag rounds, and the G3A3 were some of the best weapons in the game, and a lot of the times you were putting yourself at a disadvantage if you were using something else. Guns also didn't have a lot of attachments, but I actually prefer that. It made attachments feel like they made a bigger difference. I was also a big fan of the way you could unlock new weapons from the DLCs. The assignments in this game I thought were a cool addition. The movement was grounded for the most part, and going back to it now in 2025 feels kind of archaic in a way. It's definitely not as smooth as modern games, but it's also got its own weird charm about it. The reason I said that the movement was grounded for the most part was because of the bunny hopping in the game, which made you move around faster. and made you a harder target to hit, and also stopped you from being knifed. If you didn't know, Battlefield 3 had this weird thing where if you were jumping and in the air you wouldn't be able to get knifed. I don't actually know if it was an intended mechanic, but it gave players another reason to bunny hop. And whilst I'm on the topic of knifing, let's just take a moment and remember how good the dog tag design was in this game. Some of them were top tier, and collecting dog tags from other players was a lot of fun and was a cool way to show off some of your stats too. The vehicle balance was pretty good too. Helicopters and jets were strong, but could be taken down if a couple of engineers really focused on them. And the same thing can be said for tanks. A lot of the time a really good engineer player could solo an average tank player. If you played in a tank, you couldn't just roll into an enemy team and be a one-man army. You had to be aware of your surroundings, use infantry as cover and help, and also work alongside them in order to be effective. On consoles, players could also rent servers for a fee, which allowed players to create custom experiences, and it was here where the Operation Metro meat grinder was born. It was a cool way to give players the freedom to play how they wanted. On PC, players had Battlelog, which was weird, but honestly, I think it was actually massively underrated, especially looking back on it now. Battlefield 3 was the first game to introduce the premium model to the franchise too, which ended in Battlefield 5, but for many years, players wanted it back. The only problem with Premium was that it divided the player base. Not everyone could afford to pay for Premium or buy each DLC individually. However, you cannot deny that it was a great deal, especially in Battlefield 3. Battlefield 3 had arguably the best DLCs of the franchise apart from the Vietnam expansion of Bad Company 2. So let's go through them. The first expansion was Back to Kharg, and it remastered 4 classic Battlefield maps from older games: Wake Island, Strike at Kharg, Sharkey Peninsula, and Gulf of Oman. The maps were a throwback for older Battlefield players, but also gave newer players the chance to experience those all-time classics for the first time. And if that wasn't enough, they also added 10 new weapons and 4 new vehicles. The amount of content in this single DLC was overwhelming. Can you imagine receiving that much content in a single season nowadays? That's probably what you will get in 2 or even 3 seasons in today's live service market. Then came the second expansion pack, and my personal favourite of the game, and not only that, it's also my all-time favourite alongside the Vietnam expansion pack. Close Quarters, in a way, redefined infantry gameplay in this game. The whole point of this DLC was to shorten the distance of engagement to make everything more chaotic. The focus was more on how good your gunplay was, rather than anything else. The expansion pack also had a huge focus on micro-destruction, where you could shoot holes through walls and everything was just blowing off everywhere. And destruction was everywhere, but on a smaller scale. The Domination game mode also made its debut here, and is the game mode the maps were officially played on. Again, the DLC gave players 4 new maps, which were all really well designed. Although they were smaller maps, they never felt like they were an absolute meat grinder the same way Operation Metro did. There were plenty of flanking routes you could take, and overall they were just really good maps, with Zebra Tower being one of my all-time favourites. Along with the 4 new maps, another 10 new weapons were added. Then came Armoured Assault, and this DLC map was all about vehicles and big maps. If you're a vehicle player, this DLC was for you. It had maps like Bandar Desert, Death Valley, Arbor's Mountain, and Armoured Shield. This time around there was no new weapons. As I said, this DLC was all about vehicles, so vehicle players got 6 new vehicles, including the quad bike and also the gunship amongst many others. This was my least favourite expansion, but it did offer those who enjoyed vehicles something to play, and that was the fascinating thing with these expansion packs. DICE knew how to satisfy their player base and had something for everyone. The 4th expansion was Aftermath. It took place after an earthquake hit Iran, and the maps represented that. The maps were medium sized and incorporated both vehicular and infantry gameplay, and again, gave us 4 new maps: Azadi Palace, Epicenter, which was infantry only, Marker's Monolith, and Tala Market, which in my opinion is one of the best infantry maps in Battlefield franchise. Again, there were no new weapons added, only 3 new vehicles, and the Expo Gadget. And finally, the final expansion, which was Endgame, and in my opinion the weakest out of the 5. It offered bigger open maps, more akin to the likes of Caspian Border and Operation Firestorm, and the main real focus of the DLC was the new game mode that was added, which was Capture the Flag. Again, no new weapons, but they did add 4 new vehicles. The expansion packs helped to keep the game alive and gave players a ton of content, and like I said, I believe it to be the best post-launch content of any Battlefield game ever. 14 years later, people are still asking for a remaster of the game. Maps from the game are being remastered for Battlefield 6, and the game itself took massive inspiration from it. The game offered the perfect sandbox. It had something for everyone. Massive vehicle maps, but also tightly created maps that complemented some of the best infantry gameplay not only in the franchise, but in any FPS game ever. You could say that Battlefield 3 was the magnum opus of DICE and EA. Right from the very beginning with its aggressive marketing, it seemed like they were extremely confident in this product, and they went on to deliver an absolute masterpiece. Now, you might disagree with that statement. I know others preferred Battlefield 4, but I feel like the gunplay and maps were just so much better in this game. Battlefield 1 is another game that many people prefer, and I wouldn't disagree if they said they think that that is the best Battlefield game, because in many ways, it did some magnificent things. But the reason I rate this game so highly is because of the memories I have of it. Grinding out no-shot canals on TDM to do some of the assignments, or putting C4 on the jeeps and ramming them into enemy tanks. I have so many fond memories from the game, and the game itself has created some memorable moments too. The Renderzook clip which went viral and ended up having a tribute to that video in the 2042 trailer, or that long neck glitch that was hilarious and also creepy at the same time. I enjoy Battlefield 6. I think it's a decent Battlefield game for the most part, but every time I play it, I can't shake off the feeling that I wish I could relive this absolute masterpiece all over again.